A very, very good afternoon to everyone tuning in today. Welcome to the CLOL Semifinals. We are so ready to get into the action today. My name's Tigris, and I am joined on the desk for the first time of this week by Emily Rand and Niles. Niles, last time we had you on the CLOL broadcast, you were smashing it up as a champion yourself. How does it feel to be on the other side?
Yeah, feels good. I'm excited to critique Maryville instead of playing for them now, but definitely super excited to be on the desk, and especially for the Maryville series, super hype.
Oh, yeah. Emily, I know you've been tuning in all week, and we finally made it to this moment. Isn't it crazy just considering how many teams actually ended up being involved in this tournament to start?
Yeah, and for this series specifically, like Bethany, I know Niles is going to go with Maribel. It's his alma mater, but I think this Bethany esports team is actually so fun. I've been loving a lot of the compositions they've been running where they're just going to run at you, So I mean, it's going to be an interesting series. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bethany brings out for us today.
Oh, yeah. I think fun is definitely the word that we have to focus on here, because on the docket today, we do have two absolute banger best of fives. And I'm sure there are a lot of fans that are ready to be here for that ride here in the College League. Later on, we do have HU Storm facing off against another force of nature in the Winthrop Eagles, but not before the Bethany Vikings vie to best our reigning College Kings, Maryville University. We have one of the reigning Kings on the desk here with us today. And I mean, for a team catching so much attention throughout the years, Niles, I think that a lot of Maryville's spotlight has really fallen on the mid laner here in Spyrex.
Yeah, Spyrex is subbing in for Wolfie. They made this change after the round of 16 in CLOL, and Spyrex has looked really good. He's been playing Akali and Lee Sin as the series versus CC, and that makes sense because Wolfie is more of a control mage player, Orianna, Xerath, Vel'Koz, these sorts of things. So it makes sense that when they're bringing Spyrex in, he's on the Lee Sins, the Akalis, and these fighting mids that really enable Odd Orange and Shady to go into the jungle and take skirmishes, and especially snowballs and chippies.
Yeah, and I really loved how they transferred a lot of pressure and playmaking that Spyrex was able to have, especially in this Nasus matchup, right? Where you know that Nasus isn't going to really be a huge threat in the mid lane. So they transferred that pressure to topside so well, and it all started with the matchup that Spyrex had.
Between a lot of the mid lane matchups that we have seen, we saw some interesting picks, whether it be that Nasus, obviously a lot of flex champs. Niles, what have you made of kind of how the champs have been shaking out for the mid lane picks?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm still not sold on the Nasus mid. I don't see it, but in terms of like all the flex picks that are in mid lane right now, it's really interesting with these two mid laners going against each other because there's Gwen, Lee Sin, Akali, Sylas, all these flex champions that both mid laners like to play. They both like to play melee mids more than anything. So I think the mid lane matchup is what you need to watch for today in the series.
Yeah, for sure. I think Bradley is such a huge force for this Bethany esports team. Just ban the Gwen, okay? Like, I know a lot of teams don't like to ban specific champions because they're like, we can handle it. What's the problem? Well, this is a great example of these comps that Bethany likes to run with the Hunters, Nunu, we have the Kled, we have the Gwen. They're just constantly running at you. And Bradley is so good on this champion, right? So just ban it. Gwen has been hotly contested throughout in collegiate and proving grounds as well, so we just get that off the table, maybe get the Nunu off the table. It kind of really starts with Bradley for this team, and he's their main carry threat in my opinion.
Yeah, just watching back on these bits, it feels like Bradley was able to buy so much time for the rest of the team to be able to come into the fights to begin with on those picks. I don't know if we're going to see any Gwen. My heart wants it, but my mind says no. But one thing that you both have all mentioned, it's sadness, but a happy point is the fact that a lot of this great play that we're seeing from the mid lane does come from other players on the team, specifically when we talk about the strong supports and what they have been able to do. I mean, on the side of Bethany, to be able to get Bradley in those positions, Hollywood has really had an impact as a leader and as a player.
Yeah, Hollywood is such a major force for this team. They've come out and said he is a really strong voice, and he's never in lane, right? Like Bethany, they don't want to do this extended laning phase. They just want to get on you. And that starts with Hollywood leaving lane on these roams to mid, really trying to exert his force almost like a second jungler for this team. We're going to see it in a minute. Yeah, here we go. His duo procs under 50%. He is in lane less than 50% of the time. And that just shows you how much of a force he is outside of lane for Bethany, getting things started and kind of ending the laning phase so they can go for these team fights and go for these skirmishes.
Yeah, you thought that Riot nerfed funnel, but actually that's what Bethany does. They have the 2v1 mid lane with Hollywood always hovering around mid, right? Hunter is around there as well. It's not even that Shady's dual proximity is really that high. It's just that below 50% is pretty absurd for a support to be laning or not with his AD more than he is with his AD, right? So it's just a little bit crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely the stat that jumped out to all of us on that. But Niles, I think Shady is definitely going to be putting up a fight on the opposite side of this matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Shady is definitely a roam-centric support. I think one of the stats is a little bit misleading because, like you saw right there, Tom Kench is sort of you are with your duo. That's how it's supposed to be played. So Shady is a big roamer, and especially pairing up with Auto Orange, they like to play around mid and then usually transfer that to top with Chippies. Chippies is a big carry player, so that's what I expect today. But yeah, there should be a lot of 3v3 skirmishes mid, jungle and support around mid lane today, fighting over pink wards and vision and seeing where they can transfer that around the map.
And Shady's Thresh was actually insane in their last series. And Thresh is a pick that is really a kind of a high priority ban because of how much having him opens up the AD champion pool. We've seen this in this tournament. We've seen it elsewhere at the midseason invitational even. Thresh is such a high priority pick, and Shady really showcased why you don't want to give that in his hands, right? Because he was single-handedly controlling his team fights. His team fight targeting was insane. He just had an amazing Thresh performance. So for for Bethany, maybe take that off the table if Maryville doesn't end up banning it themselves based on side selection.
Mentioning the Thresh here, and I'm pretty sure that our first game of the week started with a Thresh being first pick too, showing how high priority that is for a lot of the players here. Niles, considering that you have such an extensive history in the collegiate scene, what do you think comes into play when it comes to the draft? Are you seeing a lot more of the comfort picks for these players, or are you seeing kind of that convergence towards what an expected meta is within the tournament?
I don't think that the meta will really define what's picked here. I think there are some strong champions, but it's mostly comfort. Looking at especially the mid laners that are playing, I like I said before, I expect fully melee versus melee mid matchups, which is not always, the meta in pro play. You don't see that always. A lot of Victors, Orianas, right? But I fully expect that to be sort of the meta of the series today. It's just full comfort, and especially when you're playing in a really important series. They're both from the North Conference. So there's a lot of North Conference pride on the line. So I think there will be pressure, and so just going back to comfort is always what I recommend in series like that.
And this is where I think we really see Bethany's team composition shine, right? Because who's going to be running the Kled, Nunu, Gwen, but this team, like they're,
Mm-hmm.
I really love how well coordinated they are and how they know that their strengths are probably out of laning phase, right? They're going to be in these team fights. They're going to be, once they get Bradley ahead, moving him around the map to kill their opponents and then take objectives. I think they had a really strong understanding of how to do this against the University of Toronto coming into in their matchup prior to this. They were not thrown off at all by the U of T, Swain TF swap that they do sometimes. So I really, again, I love this Bethany team. They're so fun, and I appreciate that they know what their comfort is and how they want to play.
Yeah, speaking of Bethany and the giant in Hollywood that they have in the support position, shout out to Hollywood's dad, who is apparently the #1 Bethany supporter. I heard he's in the Twitch chat. Seeing parents supportive is one of my favorite things. Niles, I actually got to meet your mom, I believe, when you were busy winning the championship. Had some great conversations with her. So yeah, all the parents out there rocking it. Now, we did, I think, give a little teaser of where the predictions may go here, but I'm still going to officially ask you, Niles, who's going to take this series?
I think it's going to be a Maryville 3-0. It shouldn't be close. If you look at the North Conference, Maryville took the North Conference dominantly, and Bethany couldn't even make it to the finals. So I think that it'll be a pretty stompy series. But if they are going to take a game, I think it's going to be a Bradley pop-off, 1v9 performance, maybe on a Silas, maybe they leave Gwen open, see how that, and then they'll ban it for the rest of the series and take the series.
Okay, okay. Emily, where are you vibing here?
I also, as much as I've said about Bethany, and I want to see them take a game, I think Maryville's understanding of the game is just significantly stronger. Their mechanics across the board are stronger, I would say. So, you know, when you have that kind of matchup, I think for Bethany, I do want to talk about some of their win conditions, right? Obviously, a major one is just Bradley himself. But then getting Hollywood unlocked, like we talked about, setting up for a lot of these skirmishes and team fights that they want to, you know, get out of laning phase as soon as possible so you can just get Maribel off kilter on some of your comfort picks and, you know, collapse on them, because that's what this team really, really likes to do. They like to collapse. They like to, you know, run you down or chase you down and then fight you. But it is going to be an uphill battle for them. If you look at Maryville's games, I mean, not only is this program very storied and experienced and has produced LCS players, but additionally, they have a really strong understanding of how to play around strong meta picks like the Rumble jungle, right? Like they recognize how to match up really well against a lot of these teams. They know how to transfer pressure wherever their strong lane is across the map. And you know, their macro game is just a lot better. So I'm also going with Maryville. I'll go 3-1. I think Bethany can take a game.
It seems like you're both aligned that if Bethany take a game or were to push this in the series, that it does revolve a lot around Bradley being able to have that pop off playing around him. So I'm sure Maryville are also keeping their sights on that lane to make sure that he's shut down. But Niles, if you're looking at this from the perspective of Bethany, knowing that Bradley is going to have a big target on their back, are there any strategies do you think that they can bring to try and bring some power to some other lanes to maybe kind of diversify their approach in holding their own against Maryville?
Yeah, I think that stable top lane matchups will be really important versus Chippies. Things like the GP versus Chippies or banning out his Gnar, which he looked really dominant on, can be a good strategy for Bethany in the top lane. I think also banning out Sinatom Kench in the bot lane is a really important thing because that is one of the strongest laning combos in the game, and you have to play very specific champions versus it to beat it, and things can go very wrong very quickly. So I think those two bans specifically will help Bethany a lot if they want to give themselves more of a chance in the laning phase.
That's one thing that you have to keep in mind, right? If some strategy in one of your other lanes that you know to be more dominant is going a little haywire, maybe you can try and bring something to another one of your laners and bringing that prowess through. But another thing, Niles, you had mentioned the fact that people are going to be maybe trying to default towards comfort picks when things get a little close. I do actually want to ask Emily, thinking abroad about the picks, knowing, yeah, we might see some comfort picks, we might see some aspects of the meta. Are there any champions that you think have been maybe overlooked that could be held in the pockets of not just the teams here in the games that we have coming up, but any of the remaining four?
I mean, I think Bethany definitely want to get their hands on the new the new Gwen combination if they can. But I already talked about how I think Maryville will just at the very least ban out the Gwen because it's been so important. And one of the cool things about watching this tournament overall has been seeing how the jungle meta has evolved since what we saw from MSI. We've seen the Jinzhao, which I like a lot. That's a type of jungler that you want to get involved with lanes really early on instead of having these like full clears. And even with some of the full clearing junglers like the Morgana, where you're going to be relying on her to have this kind of insane clear speed, we've seen a lot of these collegiate teams opt instead to help out their lanes, right? A lot of these junglers are a lot more involved with their lanes early on. That's where I like to see picks like the Jhin. I always like a jungle meta when junglers are ganking, right? It's a lot more interesting for me
Yeah.
personally, just as a viewer and as someone who really appreciates a team that knows how to transfer that pressure well. So I've been really appreciating seeing the Jhin as well, which might be something that if you're coming from MSI, if you're coming from LCS, you probably haven't seen in a while.
That is one of the things when we're talking about here in the collegiate championship and the patch that's being played on. There have been some changes in the jungle in general when it comes to the game, and we're getting to see picks like the Xin Zhao come out more frequently. Niles, have you noticed any major effect on how the jungle and the evolution of that is affecting the way is the game is played currently?
Yeah, I would say that, well, there has been a lot of changes, but I'd say one thing remains consistently, and that's that Udyr is the king of the jungle.
Yep.
So whenever you're on red side, you better ban that champion, or else both junglers will do really well with it, because it's a really good ganking jungler, but it also is one of the fastest clearers in the game, right? So I think that looking at the meta, things have changed in jungle, Rumble, Morgana, all this, but Udyr is still the king, so I really want to highlight that. That's a very important power pick that red side should be banning consistently.
The Udyr slap still strong, Emily. We
Yes, we can't
definitely
get rid of
saw
it.
it.
We can't
Ah,
get rid of him. I thought we were like gone with him, at the midseason invitational, but no, he returned with a vengeance after, junglers either didn't look comfortable on the Morgana or Rumble, or we saw that, their level ones can be a little bit like they're exploitable, right? Kind of like how we saw Lily at Worlds last year, actually. There's kind of a comparison there. But I think that another thing that is kind of not jungle related, but a pick that I wanted to mention that people might not know because we are on a later patch. Gwen is enabled. Viego is also enabled, but we've seen kind of a handshake between teams, right? Where they're just like it's not they're not going to pick it and they're not going to ban it. We've seen
Yeah.
it in other events or earlier on, but for the quarterfinals specifically, there's been kind of this weird like we won't touch it if you won't touch it. So
Yeah.
another thing I'm curious to see about in the semifinals is are we going to have the Viego come through? Is someone going to is someone going to break that like unwritten gentleman's agreement that we're not going to go with Viego?
right. We haven't gotten to see him, and I'm kind of sad about it, but I can also understand the decision making behind it. For everybody that is watching, just to let you know, we are having a little bit of difficulty getting into game. They are working on getting the issue resolved. That's why we're still hanging out on the desk a little bit, and we can get you all nice primed and ready before we go into this matchup between Maryville and Bethany, and it should be a good time. We're also switching to best of fives. That's actually something that we haven't talked about much, that some of the
Yeah.
players did mention in the interviews what difference that breaks. Niles, yeah, going from best of three to best of fives definitely adds a different vibe and strategy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just thinking about the series that we've already had in collegiate, think of the ISU versus Harrisburg series, best of three, and they had a super, super close game three where Castellan was scaling, he hit 16, and they almost won the game, comeback, right? And it's so heartbreaking to have that be the third game, and then the series is just done, right? So a lot of the nerves that you get as a player are gonna come out in the first game, and then if you're in a best of three, it's like, oh my goodness, we lost the first game. Now, if we lose the next one, we're out, right? Whereas in a best of five, maybe you lose the first game, you get the nerves out, and you start playing your game, right? So I think switching over to best of fives is a really big, it's really important for, I think Bethany especially gives them a better chance because they shouldn't really feel too nervous, and even if they do on the first game, it should be gone absolutely. Because when you are the underdogs, you just have to know that there's no expectations on you. You just have to send it. Just send it, boys. Like play aggressive. Don't like break the meta, right? There's no rules, right? So and I want to see the Xin Zhao like we were highlighting before. Like Hunter on these ganking champions, like the Nunu, like Nunu and Xin Zhao are pretty similar, where they're heavy gank style and they're heavy skirmishing, right? So I do want to see them break out those picks, and also the Viego. I know that both junglers actually do play the Viego, and both mid laners do play the Viego. So it's really interesting to me. It's really interesting to me that the champion hasn't been picked yet because it's such a snowball champion because if you're in a team fight, it gets one reset, then it just totally pops off, and it's really annoying to deal with. So yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but it is very interesting that there hasn't been any Viego this tournament, even though the champion seems really strong to me, along with Gwen.
Yeah, and I think I mean the Tigers mentioned it before, but like Bethany seemed to be playing like that underdog the entire time, right? Like they're just like we're a team that likes to have fun. But it's the Maryville like very not strict, but like, storied program, and then whatever the expletive deleted we are doing over here, right? And so
Hmm.
I love that attitude that they have coming in where they're just like, we know who we are. We are here to have fun, but we're also here to play to our style. And consistently in all of League of Legends, regardless of the level of competition at a tournament, when you're coming into a major tournament, the best advice you can give to any team, honestly, is to stick to their style. Obviously, within certain meta parameters, right? Because there are some picks that are just going to be objectively terrible.
Like Nasus
However,
mid.
yeah, I was also not a fan of the Nasus mid. I'm sorry. It just like punched lane priority out the window for
Yeah.
the first like 15 minutes of the game, which I do not like. But putting the Nasus mid aside because it did lose, and we did see Maribel exploit that very well and show why maybe Nasus mid is not the play. I think that Bethany going in have, again, a really strong identity and understanding of who they are, and I appreciate that. And so I think regardless of whether the Gwen is banned, regardless of whether the New is banned, I'm really curious to see what they come up with, because they will stick to their style, right? They will stick to this, like, we want to get out of lane as soon as possible. We're going to attack you. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it will work. And that's our best opportunity to win these games. And they can take teams aback with that. So I'm really curious
Yeah.
to see what they end up picking.
I would also say that one thing, just thinking about it, that I'd be looking out for is also a Scion lane swap, which might actually happen from Bethany, because this is a really easy way to get out of top and bot lane weaknesses, right? We saw Cloud9 do it versus Team Liquid in Game 5, where it really takes the enemy team out of their comfort zone, and especially if you are expecting maybe you want Chippies to be a more dominant top laner in the 1v1, this is something that you could be looking out for. So if we see any Scion picks from Bethany, I would for sure be looking out for any lane swap shenanigans, because throwing the team off guard early, I think, is one of Bethany's win conditions. We already talked about it with Hunter and the early ganks, right? But also just any lane swaps will totally throw a team off guard, because you don't practice versus that, right? You're not prepared for it, so you're on the fly thinking. Whereas if you're the team lane swapping, you practice it, you already know the lines that the enemy team are going to take, right? The different strategies that they could do, and so you'll be ready for it. So I would for sure be looking for any Scion picks today, and maybe some lane swaps.
The lane swaps we haven't seen as much of so far this week, but you do hear about how they are pretty common in the collegiate scene compared to some other leagues, especially with a lot of players that have filled multiple roles, kind of slotting them where they want that pick to go, as opposed to where that player goes. How does that now kind of affect the overall team strategy? Have you found that approaching it with that kind of flexibility for these teams, flexing into different roles, has really just kind of altered the way that the league operates and the team understanding?
Oh, for sure. I think that being able to, so you look at a lot of different teams that are in this tournament. People have played multiple roles. I know Bradley used to play top lane, for example, for a little while. And so you look at over at Winthrop, you have Saskia playing AD carry. So just playing the different champions at different roles definitely expands your team understanding. So there's a lot of storied players as well that have played in the different person. Like Shady, for example, used to play in LCS, right? Auto Orange was in Academy for a while, right? So all this experience and playing different champions, different roles, different metas, they all lend like itself into each other, right? Yeah.
And on that experience line, because I think this is one of the things that's come up in our evaluation of these teams, we have a mixture of those like Maryville, as we said, very storied, a lot of historical titles that have been accumulated over time. But it's not like we don't have newer teams that have made it through. I mean, we're talking about how Bethany is the have fun team. ISU literally just making their organization last year alongside a lot of the other programs here too. Can you give us now some more insight maybe into how things operate on the Maryville side that have led to such continued success so consistently over the recent years?
Yeah, so I remember the interview with Auto Orange that happened after their series versus Columbia, where he talks about how there is a bit of pressure playing at Maryville, where it's either win or nothing, right? And I remember Bethany was talking about, I think it was in a tweet, how they're sort of the opposite. It's interesting to hear that it's win or nothing, because they're sort of the opposite. And so at Maryville, there is sort of a pressure on you, because they've won so many collegiate events, national championships, and all that. So the team culture is all around winning, and it gives you a sort of confidence as well, when you know that the staff and the directors that are there, they know the winning formula, right? So it gives you a sort of confidence that as long as you trust the process, it'll all work out. Yeah, I would just say that back to the pressure point, like Bethany is saying that they are playing for fun. They're just like seeing how far they can get. I would say that you can have that mentality, but at the end of the day, all these players are competitors, right? So
Mhm.
they are like playing for fun, but they want to do their best. So as much as you want to have the fun mentality, you will be trying your hardest. So there is still any pressure in competition, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think people or anyone watching or listening can apply that to their own. Like, if you've ever been on a college team, like I was on a college team, we were obviously not going to win anything, but we still really wanted to win. This was rugby; it was actually a club team. We weren't even division ranked. So obviously we were not good. But there is always that aspect of competition, even if you're going in
Yeah,
as a
of course.
team that's like having fun.
Of
I
course.
did actually have a chance to catch up with Clarky before this just to talk
Mhm.
about the Maryville program and the year that they've had. And he was talking about how it was really interesting because unlike a lot of other programs, I think because they are so storied, because they built the new facility recently, going into the pandemic was actually more difficult for them overall, not
Mhm.
just in League of Legends, especially I think for their Overwatch team.
Yeah.
But they actually said that that was something that kind of threw them for a loop a bit. And going into this collegiate tournament, they'd had a couple of losses that they didn't expect in the amateur circuit. So they were kind of afraid, not afraid, but like they had a lot of pressure on them going into the Columbia College matchup because Columbia is a team that has given them issues in the past and then a team that they respect a lot, but also because they felt like the amateur losses were kind of bleeding into the overall team performance. So he said that they kind of had a mental reset at the beginning of this month and kind of came out the other side of it. And beating Colombia was actually really big for them because to qualify for the semifinal because it allowed them to kind of shed those nerves and be like, okay, like we are still a really really good team, a very dominant collegiate team. This is kind of our playground in a way, or like our this is where we really really shine above all else. So I thought that was an interesting perspective and take on the program overall.
I think it's also important to highlight that Winthrop and Maryville are both the only two collegiate teams that are really competing in the proving ground circuit for amateur. I think a lot of people will remember the proving ground circuit from before the LCS playoffs, where you have amateur and academy, and so the only two collegiate teams that were able to compete in those tournaments were Winthrop and Maryville. So I think that like it's really important to highlight that these teams, they're really busy in their schedule and they're playing a lot of games, and so it makes sense that if you're playing an amateur circuit, and you're starting to lose games, you lose a bit of confidence. So I think that's also a part of playing at Maryville. When I was there, we were playing in the proving ground circuit, and playing versus just doing a lot of tournaments, and so I think that, yeah, I think they'll be okay, but sometimes having those losses to maybe amateur teams or other collegiate teams that are playing in the circuits can, yeah, definitely hurt your confidence a little bit.
As a reminder to the audience, we are working through some technical issues and we'll get into the game as soon as possible. We're hanging out here in the meantime, but it is cool getting to hear kind of the perspective because I think a lot of people, when it comes to collegiate competition, anything, there is a different vibe to it. And hearing that, Emily, I didn't know you did rugby back in college, learned something
Surprising, right?
new
Considering
every
Yeah.
day. Yeah,
5 feet
I had
tall and like 100 pounds. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I had no idea. But there is because I mean I'm thinking back to my college days. I didn't compete in esports, but was on a competitive team, speech and debate. That was, how I was going to college and you travel like 3 out of 4 weekends and you do
Yeah.
feel that pressure. The year I came in, I think we were a national championship team, but actually lost the year before. And even though I wasn't there, you feel that pressure of, oh, well, I guess, you're part of that team trying to pick back up that legacy. And it's always a cool feeling, Niles. I mean, even when you're going into organizations, right? When you're going into the pro scene, you really do carry the weight, not just of the time of your experience there, but all of the years that have built up to that, whether it's people actually explicitly saying that to you or just kind of that weight that huddles on down.
Of course, of course. And I think that's especially important with Maryville because you look at the 5 players that are playing right now, actually none of them were on the team when they won the previous college championship, right? So Wolfie was the last remaining member who played in 2019, and then now with Spyrex, and it's all 5 new players, different from who won the championship, right? So I think it really speaks to Maryville's winning culture, where they have 5 totally new players. They had to rebuild mid-season. Obviously, me and Iconic left for
Mhm.
LCS in the middle of the fall, and so having to rebuild just really speaks to the, like I said, the winning culture at Maryville, and like you were saying before, where you were on your speech and debate team, and even though you weren't there when they won before, you feel the pressure, right? So
Mhm.
that's definitely true for Maryville.
I didn't feel that pressure because my team had no history. Really. They were just like, yeah, so hey, we
But roughly
became I
sweet.
think division
Yeah.
4 while while I was there. So
But that
we
was like
migrated from being a club to being more serious. So hey, you know.
that's
Uh,
one of the coolest things though. If you get that mix, right? Because I remember there would be teams that were from like a tiny program that had no experience, but then you meet that person, they're so talented, and you're thinking, oh, they're just coming and rocking the scene. And we definitely have these teams here where maybe the actual school's program is young, but you get to see those stars coming out into the spotlight or just kind of having a good time with it, and it
Oh,
all
certainly.
adds to the overall vibe.
And
Yeah.
and I would say that's very important. There are a lot of teams that are just in their first year at their programs. You look at
mhm,
Bethany as well as Illinois State. Both made it to the CELO top 8, and we'll see how far Bethany goes. But they're very new programs, and I think it's really important for the collegiate space to see their success, right? Because collegiate esports especially is a very very new scene, and it's so varied in the skill sets on teams. That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize about collegiate is that there are basically anyone can play on a collegiate team, but it's very top heavy, right? The top
mhm.
teams full of challenger players, all that sort of stuff. So seeing colleges invest in their programs and first year make it onto the top into the top 8, and all this sort of stuff. I think it's really healthy for the scene in general, and I hope that more schools, especially bigger schools that are like NCAA affiliated, will join the collegiate space as well. Because one thing that you'll notice is that most of the teams that are doing well in collegiate are actually usually private universities, or
Mhm.
they're not necessarily associated with NCAA as closely. And so I would really like to see uh, the bigger schools take Maryville and Winthrop and Harrisburg and Illinois as examples of being able to build your esports program and having success with it, right? And it doesn't just go to League of Legends. It's Overwatch. It's all these sort of different things. So it's really exciting to see the collegiate scene grow, especially because it is such a new thing, and I think it'll only get bigger as the years go on.
It is surreal. I forget what the actual percentage was of the increase of number of schools that had programs coming into 2021, even compared to 2020.
Right.
And that just shows so much for the future of it. And I know this is turning a little into Niall's interview segment since we've
I
actually got
know.
you here. I love it. I'm just happy we get to hang with
We
you
get to
while
ask you all of the questions that, like, if we didn't get you for LCS interviews, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, all of the things that it doesn't fit in, which I'm curious. So when it comes to the college scene, we're always wondering who has the aspirations to go pro, who is
Mhm.
gaining that competitive aspect, but then have plans to go elsewhere. During your time there, what kind of mix do you find with the players in terms of how many like yourself wanting to go pro as opposed to other aspirations?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear, depending on how much time you put into the game, what your aspirations are. I remember
Mhm.
when we did well in scouting grounds, Wolfie went to the actual scouting grounds event, and he made it very clear from the outset that he's just trying to finish
Mhm.
school, and he's not interested in going pro. And so I think everyone has like a very defined mindset. No one is really in the middle, because going pro in league isn't something you're like, maybe if it happens. It's like it's
Yeah.
like you have to devote so much time into league if you want to be a pro player, right? So I think that a lot of players do want to go pro, but some don't. And one misconception that I think that people have about collegiate is like, oh, I'm done trying to go pro, so whatever, I'll just go to a collegiate team, and I'll just go to college. But a lot of times you can pursue both collegiate and pro. It is a very viable path, and I think that's something that people like myself is proving, right? And so you just have to make sacrifices, right? It's just like anything that you love to do. You have to make sacrifices, right? So, while you're doing well, you have to make sure you're doing well in school. You are grinding league whenever you're not doing schoolwork, right? And that's one of the things that makes collegiate so unique is that actually collegiate and amateur are so unique. And that's why I like to see collegiate and amateur teams taking it to academy teams, because when you're on a amateur team or a collegiate team, you have so many other responsibilities in your life, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to get this paper done by midnight, but you also have practice, right? And all these sort of things. Whereas academy teams, you can just sort of focus on league, like your life is league, right? And so it's really impressive whenever I see a collegiate player doing well, not only in school but also in different amateur and collegiate circuits, because I've been there. I know the struggle. When we had North Conference finals, I was also having finals for my classes. It's like it's a real struggle, right? So there's just
Uh-huh.
there's a lot to deal with as a collegiate player.
And I think we had Doxa talking about this actually in his interview yesterday, where he's like, it requires, because he's on, for people that don't know, he is the Winthrop mid laner, but he's also the mid laner he got picked up by TSM Amateur, and
Right.
just balancing the scrim time between those two teams plus schoolwork, he was talking about it, and it requires a lot of balance and organization, and basically the manager from TSM talking to Winthrop and back and forth and making sure that everything just on their end is scheduled, and then him putting in all of that practice time. He said he was effectively like double blocking, but it wouldn't necessarily always be for the same team, so he'd be swapping back and forth, and then also going to school. So that is a lot.
Right.
And obviously, I think he is one of those people who said he has kind of pro aspirations. So, but that's the kind of schedule that you end up having if you're splitting your time going from a university team and an amateur team and also attending school at the same time.
For sure. Usually the sacrifice is a social life. That's usually what gamers sacrifice to
What is a
play so much
social
league.
life, honestly?
Yeah, exactly, right. So you double blocking your friends, like, oh, you want to go out? Sorry, bro. I'm practicing with TSM. So yeah, you definitely have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, I feel like at least this was the case for us back in college, when you're competing and doing things and really you end up only hanging out with your teammates because you're the only
Mhm.
ones that are free like at the same time. I don't know if that was with y'all. Yeah, you don't actually really get to know your other classmates
Oh,
as much. Like, this is my
yeah.
family.
Yeah, no, for sure, and especially during quarantine and last year's COVID. I remember when I was playing at Maryville, we basically just had our teammates, right, and that was those are only really the people that we talked to. Like it was a very enclosed circle, right, and you get really close to those people. And I remember especially playing over the summer. We were playing in the scouting ground circuit. You just become really close when those are really like you said, it's sort of your family. Those are the people that you talk to every day, and besides that, you don't really interact with too many people. So it also really shows, I think, in gameplay whenever people are on different pages, because when you spend so much time around people, I mean, obviously, no matter how much time you spend around someone, like eventually you're gonna get annoyed with them, no matter who it is, right? But you could see like in terms of like how teammates play off each other, like I think it actually really is important to be friends in and out of the game, because like it leads so much to trusting your teammates in game, because if you don't trust them, you're worried about what they're doing instead of what you're doing, and you'll mess up. So I think that it's a really like it's bittersweet, right? Because of everything that's happening in the world, they are spending more time around each other, but those are your teammates, and you can really bond with them and get close with them. And yeah, I think it's really cool.
What was that like making so again, this is like Niall's story hour while
Yeah.
we're waiting for
Niall
technical issues
story
to be resolved.
time.
But what was it like going from such a close-knit program to an LCS team? Obviously you and Iconic knew each other, but
Yeah.
like what was obviously I know you've already been asked on broadcast several times, like what was the jump like in terms of competition, but what was it like going to that kind of team environment versus being with your Maryville teammates that you'd known and played together with for so long?
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot of trust building, like I was saying before, where you have the built trust. And I was playing with my Maryville team for about a year and a half, and so you sort of
Mhm.
forget what it's like to play with new players, especially when I was playing with Wolfie before. He was like sort of the consistent player that I've been playing with for over 2 years, And to transfer in to LCS, it's definitely, you have to remember what it's like to be on a new team. I remember when I first went to Maryville, I actually knew no one. I drove from Ohio to St. Louis, and
Oh
you have
God.
to, yeah. And I knew no one in St. Louis, and so it reminded me of that time because I drove out to LA, and I knew Iconic, which is a blessing, but everyone else, you're playing with Stixay, who's LCS champion, and he's been at MSI. It's like you need to, you realize that it's really important to build trust and make sure that you and your teammates trust each other, right? So making that leap in terms of teammates just taught me how important, yeah, trust is in teammates for sure.
Nice.
Trust, friendship, love,
Yeah.
competition. All the powers that let be that Niles picked up from his college time. Thank you for
Yeah.
giving us so much insight here, dude. But I think from what I hear, we're ready to get into the game, my friends. Game number 1 of Maryville versus Bethany. We did it. We are rocking. We are rolling. And the 2 rock stars that are going to be calling the action, we got Jolly and Alk Battery. Let's hear the call.
For the pick ban phase down. So Alk.
I'm all right. I'm doing good. I'm glad we were able to finally get in game. I know everybody at home was waiting, and I thought that the guys on the desk did a fantastic job. I love hearing, just picking Niall's brain constantly. It was really, really awesome. And obviously to hear more about Maryville is, a lot of insight coming from a player, which not a lot of people I think would have easy access to. So awesome to see that. But we're already in game, Jolly, and some interesting things I want to talk about from the draft. We'll see that there's Udyr here, and Maryville are obviously on the red side. They actually were trying to get rid of Nunu, which was going to be a very fun pick I was hoping to see. But we're going to see that Xin Zhao that the desk was talking about, and hopefully Hunter will be able to break up some of that jungle monotony that we've been seeing so far in the tournament.
Laura the fans. Beth.
All right, and we were talking about, hey, what are the mid lane matchups going to be, right? We're talking about Bradley, we're talking about Spyrax, and like you said with those bans, very topside focus, but so far what we've seen in the tournament is Spyrax taking a really big liking to these melee assassins. Things like the Jace, like the Yone. I'm surprised we actually see him get to kind of pick this one up in this game. Earlier on, we're going to have to see what happens. We're going to see kind of typical jungle clears here, and the desk was actually talking about it for Shady and Evan, talking about the duo proximity. Really interesting here that Shady's going to just opt for the Senna Tom Kench. And with Bethany, they first picked this Thresh. They think it's so broken. And I wonder what we'll have to see from this. I mean, Wizardish has been really good. They were talking about it on the desk. And what I really want to focus when we're looking at this team for Bethany, Wizardish obviously has been a really consistent rock for this team, but his champion pool, I think, has really reflected his role in the team, right? We're talking about a really great team fighter, but hey, he can show up on team fights at a moment's notice with things like the Kaisa ultimate and the Sivir ult. For anybody who's wondering, we're currently trying to get Jolly back into the game, so right now it is me on the solo cast for a little bit. I hope that everybody can enjoy yourself, and obviously wish for Jolly to get back in an expeditious amount of time. We'll be getting that solved as soon as possible. So already here for Bethany, not much going. Both junglers are going to be pathing towards the top side, and take a notice, there was an early ward placed in the river. Hopefully Maryville trying to spot out where the enemy jungler is going to be. When we're talking about Xin Zhao, we're looking for these early jungle camps because he's obviously not going to be clearing very fast, and he needs to find something, and I think that's where this top lane matchup is really going to head up. I wasn't expecting for there to be a Vladimir here for Chippies. He's really kind of opted in for these amazing team fight players. I mean, Aatrox, a lot of Jax, a lot of Gnar here. This is basically kind of stock standard what we were expecting coming into this matchup. Chippy's being that Chad top laner that a lot of his teammates were talking about when we were talking to some of these players. He is just there for lane dominance and really pushing the enemy opponent to kind of play to his tempo. And early on, I like this roam. Bot lane has already taken a reset here for the side of Bethany. And at this point, Hunter says, okay, look, this guy's probably topside. We got wind of him here, so I can't do anything. I can't exactly walk into the topside because of Solora being pushed in so far. The early vision will actually kind of get caught out, so Odd-Orange will be able to tell, hey, Hunter's probably bot lane. And because of that reset, Hollywood's able to get this. They'll trade scuttles. The important thing here, again, we'll have to wait to see about 10 to 15 minutes here whether or not we'll get to see an early gank, because the longer that this goes on, that Odd-Orange is able to just farm away on this Udyr, it's going to be really important. Spyrax, he's in a bit of a dangerous position, does have the flash to himself. Gravity Well comes down, but Slow's just going to be there, forces out the Summoner spell from Spyrax. So really, I love that job coming out from Bradley and Bethany, but wonder what we see from it, because really, if you're just going to get the flash and not come back to this lane, it's very dangerous. Spyrax using his fate. Goes over the wall, gonna just try and push them off of this, get Bethany to kind of back off, go towards bot side. Now, really tight play here. Bradley doesn't have a lot of mana, and is a really nice wave. If Odd-Orange wanted to, he could have potentially pushed that back out and make it very good for Spyrax, but he can hold this for the time being. Hunter's just gonna help his mid laner out. Some things, you know, when coming into this game, sadly we didn't get to see the draft, but I really wanted to see what the mid lane matchup was going to be, because, again, Bradley's been one of the best performing players on this team, has definitely been the star player when we're looking at him. And Spyrax, I mean, coming into fulfill for Wolfie, has, I think, really stepped into some pretty massive shoes for the team, doing a fantastic job so far in his laning. So getting this matchup already, and specifically seeing the victor here for Bradley, kind of leaves a lot to be desired as to what we'll see from these guys. How much outplay potential can you really have when you're playing in on this victor? 5 minutes on the clock right now. Not much doing. We've got a pretty slow early game, all things considered, right? Maryville, they're just farming away at this point. They're looking to just try and take control of this. Now, important, I think, for Bethany and kind of setting the table for them is, what do they do with this bot lane? We were talking about on the desk, hey, Hollywood has a very, very low percentage in terms of duo proximity. Where do we move him in and really try to take control of either the mid lane matchup or even moving with Hunter? Super important there. So do they get an early Drake? It seems like they're going to have the push. They have a massive wave that's building for them. And Odd-Orange on the opposite side saying, hey, nothing's for free, so might as well just take me the Rift Herald. It'd be super, super important if they want to get that for themselves. And hopefully, we got Jolly. Hey!
I think I'm back.
Welcome back.
I think we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. Jolly, have you enjoyed the game so far? It's been rather slow.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
My computer decided. Absolute rock star. Nice.
You know, I was kind of expecting I might get an early fight to play by play. I was having some fun with it. We've lost Jolly again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to everybody. We're gonna try and get her back as soon as possible. But early trades here from Chippies and Solora. Have to use the ultimate to try and get back on some of that trade, but a really nice good. It's not really much. The important thing here, I think, is that Solora's trying to push off this wave, bounce off, and potentially look for something bot. Look at how both junglers are moving down. Spyrax gonna try and maybe push out on this wave and maybe look for something. Take a look at where everybody's starting to converge. Chippies, he kind of just wants to keep him in lane for the time being, saying, hey, look, you're already down CS. I need you to stay here. Solora's gonna look to back up a little bit, and even with Odd-Orange here waiting in the wings, you don't have much. Maybe they try to go on a level 6 play for the Maryville bot lane, but I think it's a really big ask for them if you were to try to go for that. So not much doing there, and Maryville still slowly scaling up. They used the Rift Herald early. They are trying to get stuff for themselves, but So take a look at this. They have put us some vision. I wonder what Maryville's resets timer are, because we were talking about it coming in. We were talking about the CC matchup against Columbia the other day. They were really strong in terms of controlling the map and their macro just in general. So far, their reset timers, we're just going to see what exactly comes from this. I think Shady might be going bot side to pick up his level 6 and then look for something. Evan, already on the move here. They're making pings coming on through. So Maryville, they want to do the lane swap. They want to try and pick up this early Rift Herald for themselves. Both teams making the same kind of movement here, but it's Maryville first on the play. They have their vision already set up, and for the time being, they've already got their bot lane ready and in position to kind of either help in the mid lane or in this Rift Herald. Taking a look at Hollywood, I'm a little bit confused, right? We're waiting to see what happens. Okay, finally, we might get some action here. Maryville, they're waiting here. Wizardish, I think, needs to be careful. He has heal. He has also the flash, but they can just try and turn onto him if they want. Rush Lantern comes on out. That's the W away from Hollywood, but that means that they could just try and reset here. Hunter getting chunked out by Spyrax. This should just be a Rift Herald coming out from Maryville. The Fate Unsealed goes on to Hunter. The ultimate from Solora is out. That's a stun down. Hunter super low. Crescent Guard is available. They're trying to drag this out, but Maryville taking a big advantage early on in this fight, getting so many members of Bethany low. Just means that they're going to kind of just push off of this. They're going to lose a little bit in the top side for Maryville, but it looks like all said and done, it's just some summoner trades. It's getting away from the bot lane, and everyone is kind of just back to neutral stance here. Ooh. All right. So it was basically like they're throwing punches, but not much doing there, right? They end up throwing punches in the air. They miss. They wildly swing, but still 10 minutes in the game. It's 1,000 gold lead for Maryville, and during all of this, they had to take some resets. They lost some minions in the trade for this. They got a little bit of chip damage on the top turret, but important to note, where do the bot lanes kind of stack up? Shady's looking still pretty nice. They had to invest some of their TPs. The top lane matchup is still about even, which I think a lot of people will be really interested in, because Solora in his matchup versus someone like Chim for the Western game kind of had a little bit of a difficult time trying to stand up against them, and still ended up winning, even being on the weak side. So I wonder what we'll see from this top lane matchup. Again, it's so neutral that Maryville really need to kind of, they can kind of keep it in their back pocket for the meantime, but we'll have to see what Chippy's influence is as we get later into the game. Obviously, Vladimir, a fantastic champion when it comes to participating in team fights. So Maryville taking control of the top side. They say, hey, Solora, you're up here by yourself. Let's just take this Rift Herald, and looks like they're going to take a very quick deposit on this. They're going to drop the Rift Herald, try to get this early up for their bot side. This feels like a strange choice. Obviously, getting your Senna Tahm Kench ahead is awesome, but there are some other champions that may appreciate some of that gold, and we'll have to see what comes from it. They're obviously already a little bit ahead of their counterparts right now, and it does give Bethany access to the Cloud Drake for right now. So already setting themselves up for a little bit of a win condition there if they're able to get to the soul point after this. We'll have to see what comes up, because I think Mountain Soul becomes a huge problem for both of these teams. Same with Ocean Soul. They're going to try and crack another turret very early on. 12 minutes, potentially setting yourself up with 2 turrets on the opposite side. I mean, this becomes really dangerous for Maryville to ever come back to. Yes, it's close to the Baron. It's the lane closest to the Baron, but I mean, it becomes like you can't ever come back to this lane. Shen has a great time freezing this if he wants to. So we'll have to see how Bethany control this wave, as I think I have a special guest coming in soon here, coming back to the cast with me. We'll have to see. I'll keep you guys informed when we get to that point, but oh man, this feels, this is a dangerous position, I think, for Maryville. They took the early trade where you're saying, hey, I want gold now, but we'll have to see what comes of it in the next few minutes, right? We probably won't see the effects of this turret going down for the next 15, 20 minutes. So I want to keep an eye on that. We'll put a pin in it for now. We'll come back to it later. Again, for everybody at home that is joining, we're currently having some technical issues with what is happening, so we're trying to get that solved as soon as possible. I want to thank all the engineers at the studio for helping us tonight. I know it hasn't been the smoothest so far, but we're trying to get the game ready for all of you guys at home. Right now for Maryville, really, really important that we actually see what they do with this priority from their bot lane, right? They've already pushed off. They decided to keep slamming waves under this turret. And they're taking away camps from Hunter. And really, when we were looking at this champion, we're saying, what does Xin Zhao do in the early game? He's going for that tank build. It looks for either the Frostfire or the Sunfire. And really, what do you get from this Xin Zhao? Are we getting combat prowess? Well, his scoreline is 0-0-0. He's going even in farm, slowly starting to lose that matchup in jungle. And the thing with jungle is gold and experience and all of these camps start to become exponential in terms of growth. So very, very dangerous if Bethany want to keep themselves in this game, want to keep a foothold trying to win out on this game one. Again, for anybody at home, I mean, Maryville are currently tied for the most amount of collegiate champs records, right? They've got 2 wins, one in 2017 and in 2019. And for themselves, very important if they want to kind of put themselves up and keep that record. They don't want to be in the shadow of University British Columbia all the way back from 2015. We were doing ULOL. We want to win now, right? We want to have that 2-peat. We want to have the prestige of being the most winningest collegiate program in North America. I think it starts right here, right? Getting to that finals, getting a statement win versus Bethany, setting yourselves up for success. Whereas Bethany, I mean, they were an invite team, right? They ended up going out in the quarterfinals of the Northern Conference. We were talking about earlier, the strongest conference in collegiate. They want to, you know, they went out 5th to 8th place in their quarterfinals against UIUC, the Illini, and ended up by committee getting into this playoff. So really fantastic run that they've had so far, and I'm sure the boys in Mankato really want to kind of put up a very strong result. So far, they're giving up a ton of priority in this bot side. We're 2 minutes away from Drake, and look at how Bethany, that Maryville are moving around their mid lane to really take control of this map. Obviously, moving your bot duo to the mid lane is great and kind of expected, but it's so deadly when you have things like the TK, where you can Abyssal Voyage right into another lane on the map. So very, very dangerous. We'll have to see what happens as they're just taking control of this, and it makes it so difficult for Hollywood if he doesn't have a buddy to walk him through the jungle. All of this darkness, thank you to the Observer showing this. Bethany are going to be operating like ghosts. They're walking in blind on this one. Now, take a look. The gold has actually started to creep. I'm sure if everybody were to look at the scoreboard, they're like, it's 0-0. Uh-oh, this is not good. Might see a little bit of tango between the two junglers here. Hollywood's going to get his jungler out of that situation, but the gold has crept to 3,000. And if you look, you're saying, okay, they have 2 turrets. They've also have gotten themselves the first 2 Drakes of the game. How is this possible? Well, take a look at some of the farm leads. Yes, Bradley has an advantage, but that gold that's growing for Evan RL, he's going to continue to farm up a storm, especially how much extra value you get from someone like Senna. And, I mean, Chippies is really taking a very large advantage against Solora right now. Only 4 DCS down, but has his completed item. He's going to have additional magic penetration as more of these items get built. And not many tanks on the side of Bethany make it very easy for this backline to get popped. So if Bethany can control the battle lines, they can set up Victor for success. Victor's going to have such a hard time walking into this team that Bethany need to be on the play now, and that's why you see them already trying to set up for Vision, but having to be forced out. Hunter, Fate Unsealed comes out, he re-engages back onto this, but he has to remember, the TK ultimate is here. They also have the Senna ult available. Bradley's going to try and back him up. That's the ultimate coming out. Shen, Stand United is out. They're going to make for the re-engage here. Odd Orange might be the one to go down. Ooh, some blinking health bars here now. Spirax goes down finally. Flash for Bradley, gets the kill with a Chaos Storm. Chippies tries to engage with the transfusion. And while it's some blinking health bars here, in mid lane, Wizardish, buddy. Oh man, that's literally just support getting the 1v1 versus AD carry. It's a Fed TK. He's got all the farms, so he's a little bit dangerous to deal with. But that is one hell of a fight. Finally, some kills on the board as Holly tries to make the hook. The flake goes a little bit awry. Odd Orange has literally reset and come back from spawn. They're TPing in Bradley now. This is a fight that's not going to end. Bethany do not want to give this up lightly, but after a few blows, after giving up some blood here, Bethany, they're going to give this up. They're going to walk away from the Ocean Drake, and Maryville going to finally put themselves on the board. They're going to get their first Drake. They're going to try to move into mid lane. And some of that prowess that we were talking about earlier, right? Victor is not having a very easy time trying to walk into the game. He can't walk into this, and we'll get to see the replay here. See what exactly happened. Wizardish the thing that I was talking about with Wizardish is he's so good on these more supportive AD carries where you can kind of show up on a moment's notice at basically like on a whim that he needs to be in range for the killer instinct, but Shady controlling the mid lane, trying to get the push. He knows that at any time he can say, hey, I'm gonna Abyssal Voyage in, I can be at that fight when I need to be. And really great job, not only gets the ultimate, but double summoners out from the AD carry of Bethany, so very important for Maryville if they want to try and revisit Wizardish at a later time. This might be a solo kill for Solora, and I don't know what to think. Never mind, he's bringing in the boys from Mankato, Minnesota trying to show up on the day. Game 1, Chippies has to blow the flash. He's level 12, he's very, very strong, but I don't know if he can deal with 3 members of them. So having to back off, and for this, what do Maryville get? They try to invest a ton for Solora to get him out, but they're going to lose the Rift Herald. They're going to continue to allow Spyrax to try to catch up in this gold that he was behind on Bradley. And mid lane is just constantly being assaulted. You're putting Wizardish in a very difficult position here for Maryville. So love what they're doing on the map right here, and this is kind of what we expected. Yes, Bethany are very fun. They have a great way of kind of introducing chaos into the game with how they like to play their bot lane 2v2s, and especially with how Bradley can be very, very mechanically gifted. But it is Maryville who has just such superb macro. It's really awesome to watch. We'll have to wait to see. Is getting a little bit cheeky with it, Maryville. They get themselves a turret. They try to steal a blue buff away, but right now, it looks like Maryville are going to continue to slowly choke Bethany out of the map. And Bethany, they're going to have to come up with something. They need to find an engage. They need to find a thresh hook. An engage with Hunter and Solora linking up. We haven't quite seen that yet. And so far, not much action coming out from the Bethany squad. Oh, man. So 3 minutes. Let's take stock of the game, right? We've got a Baron coming up. We've got a couple waves being pushed. I think the problem that we're noticing here for Bethany is that they really can't keep up on all these waves, especially with the TP disadvantage that's currently occurring for Bradley. He can't show up on many of these fights. And again, the mobility of Maryville is really starting to work in their favor. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. I expect within the next 45 seconds, what we'll see here is Hunter and Hollywood, after he takes this reset, they're going to start to move onto this bot side. Well, Maryville take control of mid, they finish that turret, and then they try to completely corral Bethany away from this bottom quadrant. So watch to see where Odd Orange is. They're going to go for this dive. This turret's super low. Hunter, Crescent Guard comes out, but I mean, at this point, there's the W from Evan RL. The miss is going to lock him down. Not a lot of damage coming out. Solora's already making his move over. In Maryville, they may have gotten what they wanted, but not able to put down vision. You see the pings coming out. They want to try and choke Bethany out of this river, outside of this vision, so they can't actually step onto this dragon. Now, 4 Ocean Drakes is really difficult to deal with. I'm sure anybody at home has probably played against an Ocean Soul, and it's like, man, this is super frustrating. But with how much damage and how much burst and how much sustained damage that Bethany has, Ocean Soul in a fight is just disgusting, right? Like, you not only are going to have to get some kind of healing reduction for it, but with how long fights tend to go for Bethany when you look at this composition, I mean, you're waiting for Xin Zhao to pop off, you're waiting for Victor and Kaisa. The healing from that is going to be somewhere in like the 700 region for each of these players if they're getting hit, so have to watch it. It's going to be very difficult, and especially you look at some of the itemization coming out from Maryville, right? You already have the Senna heals that are going to be coming through. You have Vladimir and the Udyr. So difficult to deal with, and obviously Shield Bow. What can I say about Yone? So Maryville kind of just setting themselves up in a position of advantage. We got a minute before the dragon spawns. Bradley's already taken a reset. He did push the wave under the turret. You're going to try and get some damage off on that, but I think if you're Bethany, you just have to try and give up some other resources. They're already TPing their mid laner into the mid lane to try and push their mid priority, try to cheat it off onto this dragon. Oh, this is just a really big ask, I think, if you're looking from Bethany. They're trying to do a lot here as Crescent Guard comes out. They're going to try and separate the mid jungle, the mid top lane here for Maryville. Use the Fade Unseal to get out. That is a lot of damage. The Solora ult comes out. Stand United is there. Going to try and save Hunter yet again. A 3-man taunt from Solora. And blinking health bars here for Maryville mean that Bethany, they're going to take control. A shutdown here onto Chippy's 3 members, but Maryville, they can't handle this. It's 3,000 gold for them, but they can't even get the Drake for themselves. They're going to TP in, and they're going to have to back right out of this fight. Bethany take control and take another 2 kills. Look at how long those fights are. Maryville cannot find the burst from their Chippies and from this Vladimir. And gold be damned. Bethany, they're at Soul Point now. They're going to put themselves right in the lead. They're going to look to put themselves potentially in the next 5 minutes now, threatening Maryville with a Soul. And that is super dangerous for Maryville. So we'll have to see what happens. But I mean, at this point, this is just like, who cares about your wallet, man? We're just stronger. We're taking great fights, and they're going to get that for themselves. Rift Herald is here, and I think we have a special guest finally arriving here. Is he here? Maybe. Maybe. We'll see what happens. Maryville, they're taking the Baron. Mizzelle! Yes, sorry, everybody.
Hello.
We're trying to get Jolly figured out, but Mizzelle's here. Help me, man.
We got this. Baron coming down from Maryville right now. Already sub 2,000 health. They're going to go for the engage. Instead, Art Orange already gets gobbled up, has to get out of the fight. And then just like that, Bethany are in the fight, in the pit, and potentially taking it down. They steal the Baron, and Bethany take the entire fight.
Okay, and again, Wizardish gets 1v1'd here, so a little bit unfortunate for Ryan, but I mean, now this is a great fight as Chippy's. I don't know if you've got the 1v1, buddy. You don't got the ultimate anymore. He's gonna go for the re-engage. That should just be another dead.
Yeah, I mean, Chippy's gave it a valiant effort there, but Hunter's just too strong in the 1v1. Had a little help from Hollywood as well, but glad to be joining you here in the midst of chaos, Alk, as we do have the Rift Herald spawn in bot lane for Maryville. Spyrax just trying to get a little pushing power down there, take that tier 2 tower, but Solura is right there to respond.
Yep, really fantastic job. I'm sure we'll get a replay of that coming up soon, but I mean, Bethany, really great job, and I think Maryville skipping a few steps when it came to that fight. So we'll see how this fight was set up. So they're already on it, but look at how many members are in the back of this. Now, the important part to watch is who is on Bradley at this point. Hunter with the Crescent Guard is negating so much damage. And even though Maryville have a Rift Herald going through bot lane and going to slowly push this wave, I think that some of their waves were not quite in position to really punish this. So now, because of how they kind of ended up playing this out, and obviously with Chippy's going down at the end here, such a dangerous lead for Bethany, right? They can now take control of more of these lanes. They can start to break down turrets, and it kind of feels like all of that early game coming out from Maryville is starting to evaporate.
The thing for me in that was the seemingly miscommunicated efforts by Maryville there. You did have the Baron getting very low. It was like 2,000 health, but then they opted for the fight, which gave Bethany the in to the fight itself and to win it. So now Bethany are going to take that outer tier 1 or tier 2 tower in the mid lane, be able to secure some pressure in that fashion and move down to this bot lane now. Oh
man, they're really trying to bully Chippies here. He'll just go right into the bully pool. He'll get out. They'll clear out the bot side jungle and take a look at what's happening on the map. We'll have 2 minutes here. We have all of this vision set up for Bethany, so if they want to make a flank play, they're going to try and use this Baron to really punish. Bradley needs to be careful. He has no flash, and even though he's a level 16 Victor with all of his abilities upgraded from the Victor bucks, I don't know if he's strong enough to really get rid of an Udyr sitting on top of him. We'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit interesting as you are getting the reset and redeploy for Bethany here from all members down towards this bot side of the map. You've got to expect Maryville are trying to put up a fight for this next dragon. About a minute and a half to plan everything that's going to go around this potential soul for Bethany. But looking into that a little bit more, this is where Maryville have tended to struggle in the past when they do lose pace control of the game, and sitting at about sub 27 minutes, like this is prime time for Bethany to be hitting those power spikes and really pushing that forward, and I expect it to be so here on this Dragon Soul.
Yeah, we'll have to see what ends up happening. Take a look at some of the positionings right now, right? They've pushed in their bot wave, their top lane is getting pushed in, and again, Solura has ultimate. He knows he doesn't have to be here, and Bethany, they have first access to the mid wave. Now, they won't have Baron anymore, so that's important, but I mean, at this point, slowly, Maryville are losing. That's a hook onto Shady. Here we go.
They take the engage onto Spyrax. Spyrax is out of the fight. Chippies is in the front, has to get gobbled up by Shady, but look on the back line. Spyrax goes in for the fight. He's right onto Wizardess. Wizardess goes golden. Spyrax trying to heal, trying to get over the wall. Does flash. The fight resets here. Spyrax goes right back in. Spyrax. 3-man knock up there, but it's going to be Vladimir getting the kill. Hollywood goes down first to fall as everybody else, as Chippies is just manhandling these fights as Vladimir starting to hit that power spike.
And there we go. That was exactly the fight I wanted to see. It took them a little bit long to find it. You were saying, you know, Maryville tend to get lost a little bit in the sauce, but look at this now. The dragon hadn't even started up, so now they're going to use the Abyssal Voyage, pushing this bot wave, start to cash in a little bit on this gold, and Spyrax with a huge knock-up to set up Chippies there. And Maryville, their wave setup was also really nice, so they'll get a ton off of this. Not only kills, but they'll stop the Ocean Soul potential win condition for Bethany. They'll also grab themselves a turret, and a lot of gold and a lot of shutdowns going over to the side of Maryville kind of start to swing this back in their favor.
Another 5 minutes added to the clock for Maryville here, trying to get the scaling online for Spyrax and Evan RL on the Yone Senna respectively. And that's the task right now for Maryville, is just try to buy some time for that scaling. Even Vladimir, you know, all these strong pieces are going to get further into the game, but with the lead that Bethany has developed, you know, it's harder and harder to kind of take those advantages around the map. And knowing that you have to be there every time the dragon spawns loses you a lot of pressure around the rest of the map. But they're trying to gain some advantages in their own right.
Yeah, they're trying to push for this Baron right now, Mazel. They're going for this Baron. They're trying to get what they can. But look at the death squad that's roaming.
Hollywood gets unfortunately duped. And Chippies is now on a rampage. 3 quick kills the last fight, gets another one on top of it. And the man is on fire right now.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a, you know, he was quiet in the early game, and
He was.
when we look at Chippies just in general, not only, you know, not an import, but coming from Oceania, he's playing in his first year here in North America, playing for Maryville. He has been a fantastic team fighter in almost every single series, both across amateur and collegiate. I mean, I'd like to consider that his Gnar is one of the best that we have. He is just so damn good at this champion, and we're starting to see his team fight prowess really kind of start to shine through. Obviously, he got that lane advantage versus Solora, but I mean, he's level 16 and he's rocking the full, almost full items at this point.
Yeah, exactly that. And as you said, you know, prepping up for this Baron, at least getting the vision around, making sure that Spyrax is set up here to put some damage down onto Hunter. But they actually want to take the fight. The stand united.
They're going for it.
From Solora. Spyrax is getting very low. There's going to be the shield bow popped.
Watch Chippies.
The pit is an Udyr. There's the Dawning Shadow. Chippies on the back. This can be huge. Spyrax is the target, but he gets out. And Chippies has already found the ADC. Wizardish is down. Gobble comes out from Shady.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. Chippies and Shady, the magical duo. Chippies might go down on the backside of this fight, though, as he will eventually be burned down by Hunter. But the plays coming out for Maryville right now are keeping them in this game.
Okay, that's really important that they get the Kaisa. If Kaisa ends up living on that, that is Bethany with a really big threat onto the Baron. They're going to TP Spyrax back in and try to get control of the mid lane. Bradley's going to say no to that, but a huge pick there for Maryville that they're able to find that onto Wizardish. He's having such a hard time trying to survive, especially with no stopwatch anymore. Vladimir's literally just running into that backline, and that's why I really like this kind of I tend not to focus too much on itemization, but the magic penetration that you're getting from something like the Rocket Belt and alongside the Void Staff just makes it so difficult for any of these squishy members to deal. Even the tankier members really kind of stop you. Who on the side of Bethany is going to stop a Vladimir? Not many. So right now, Maryville, they're trying to keep the pressure up, but trading in that 1-for-1 just means they buy themselves a little bit more time and continue to scale in this game. Look at Spyrax, look at Evan RL. This guy is doing so much on the Senna.
And I will say on the other side, you know, Bradley's still sitting at 4-1, has a 50 CS lead over Spyrax as well, and that's the mainstay right now, I feel like, for Bethany. It's going to be their sustained damage. It's going to be the team fight damage that they're looking for. They're looking for damage on the Baron right now, though, Alec, because they started up already. Odoran's sniffing it out, but I don't know if he can actually get in there, and looks like it might just be snuck away. 9,000 health on the Baron.
Chippies has no ult. He has no TP, so he can't join, and there's no way for him to stop the TP. Okay, let's see it.
For it, though. They go
my God.
Steal it! Maryville with Orange carrying the team right now with the steal of the Baron.
Okay, and that's a banger game one for everybody at home. There you go. You wanted action, you get it here on the LCS stream. Maryville make a steal, and it is with the flash of Orange. They get over the wall. He gets right out of dodge, and really just clever usage of Spyrax's Fate Unsealed and his E, right? He gets over the wall, and he's able to return from his Spectre. So just a really great play, and I think a fantastic execution from Maryville. Grab themselves the Baron, and they will not be punished for it. They can push down this mid lane. We'll get the replay. We have 40 seconds on Drake when we come out of this replay, so watch how they get off of this. They get Spyrax over the wall. He just flashes. Orange just flashes, and he gets gobbled over that. Such a close ability to get off, to get away from this. So we'll come back out of this replay and look at where Maryville are placed on the map.
Yeah, they are putting up the pressure right now. The backs were trying to come through for Bethany just to make sure they're ready to go for the fight. But to be fair, on the side of Bethany, if you don't feel super comfortable going for this dragon, you do have one to give. It's not necessarily the place you want to be. You don't want to give a potential 4 ocean dragons over to Maryville with that soul, but you can buy some more time for yourself. You don't have to throw everything away at this fight, and it looks like that's going to be the call.
So I wonder who on Bethany is just gonna bite the bullet and say, guys, we need to build some healing reduction. Like, we need some grievous wounds, guys.
We need a little bit of grievous wounds somewhere.
Like, okay, like, look at this. They have 3 ocean drakes. They have a shield bow Yone. They have Evan RL. And they have chippies. Someone needs to get some healing reduction, at least a little bit if they want to try and deal with this. And that's what we're seeing Bradley and Hunter start to index on this. But Maryville, they're pressing on all sides. Bradley's going to try and take a tier 1 top lane, but the pressure coming in from the 4-1 here on Maryville, doing a fantastic job.
Get the death sentence there on the Shady. Maryville kind of looked like they wanted to go for the inhib. They might still press up here, but they've got 5 members on the 4 over here with a little bit of split pushing going on with Chippies and Bradley in the side. But they are going to lose this bottom inhib and potentially just this mid inhib as well. That's 2 lanes of super minions coming in for Maryville now.
Yeah, and this is the part of the game where Bethany needed to make some kind of engage if they ever wanted to try and save some of these inhibitors. It's very difficult. It definitely wouldn't have been the easiest fight, but Maryville displaying a lot of great patience there. They know they didn't have to fight. They have great ways to kind of set up for themselves on taking structures, so why not just take 2 inhibitors, back, reset, and set ourselves up for success there. Really great job. A lot of collegiate teams and a lot of young players tend to get a little bit lost when we were talking about it earlier. They just like, hey, let's just go for it. Why can't we not end right here? And that tends to be the downfall of some of these squads, but Maryville showing some great temper there.
Exactly that, and without a real objective on the map for about 3 minutes now, it's going to be a lot of pushing for Maryville in the top side of the map, wanting to unlock that 3rd inhib, get the double super minions going down the lanes, which will then just unlock the rest of the map. And that's the play right now for Maryville. Bethany need to find a way to respond to this and find a way to kind of stop the bleeding.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from just finishing items on some of your carries, right? Like, I mean, Wizardish has already picked up the Runon, so we'll now actually have the invisibility on Supercharger. Very important as Hunter.
No.
He's getting locked
caught
up.
Out Hunter. That's a lot of damage already. He is going to be able to get away from a lot of it, though, as Hunter is being able to absorb a lot of the...
Oh!
Spires just goes straight in onto Bradley, though. Gets down low himself. Shield bow was popped. Wizardish has to get the Stand United used. This is chaos right now. Chippies is going to go really low, but the Hemoplague healing is too much. And Maryville right back to it, sieging exactly like they were just a few moments ago.
Okay, and there we go. You'll get the 3rd inhibitor like you wanted, Mazel. They're going to try and push down. I don't know if they have the minion waves for this, and they have a reset here from Bethany. They find the engage with the Crescent Strike. They could potentially look for something here. There's no ultimates. They're going to try and retreat. Oh.
They're trying so hard to end it right now. They don't want to let up on Bethany whatsoever. They want to keep the pressure up and see if they can push a little bit more. Keep seeing backs from a couple members, couple people trying to back off, nobody really committing, but now Maryville move out of the base of Bethany, and Bethany can breathe for just a few moments.
Yeah, and now let's take a look at timers, right? You have all of these waves coming in. Double TPs are available for Bethany. There's a Drake spawning in a minute 50. That'll be your Ocean Soul. You have a minute and 15 before the Baron is here. And I think that if Maryville want, they can do both of these objectives. We're seeing them now. They're going to try and deploy really strategically now, investing double their TPs to keep pressure up on Bethany. They'll get a little bit of farm here. It's very nice for them. And the funniest thing from that last fight for me was just watching Wizardish go to like 10% HP and then have his whole health bar replaced by shielding. That was the best.
Yeah. I mean, the healing and shielding in this particular game of the series is just nuts. We've seen Chippies getting out like sub 200 health, just able to heal back full from Hemoplague or anything like that. And I think both sides are just trying to put everything on the line here, Al.
Yeah, really big part here, I think, for Bethany that we haven't seen too much of is, I mean, we're watching how Hunter is trying to engage a lot of these fights, right? They have a really clever combo where you just have Xin Zhao with the Shen ultimate, but I don't know if that's really an option for you anymore, right? We've seen it time and time again. Chippy's just like madman sprints into the back line and is there to kill all of them. So we'll have to watch out and see how they enter this. And thank you to the observers for toggling this. This is no man's land. You're just walking into the lane for Bethany.
just a little bit scary. Yeah, Hunter's even like, but just barely taking some steps up into the water. The Baron.
Oh my God.
Up. Hunter goes in on Chippies. There's the Stand United. The TP coming in. Bethany want to commit to this fight as Maryville pull out of the Baron pit. This time around, they will not get fooled into taking a fight in the pit, as Bethany are the ones that are actually taking the.
They might base race this.
Baron right now. Dawning Shadow comes down. Look at Chippies. He's on the back. He's trying to decide if he wants to go for the base or not. He's just waiting here, as it's really rough for Bethany to take down this Baron. It's getting a little bit more, but here comes the engage from Spear Axe. Shield those pop. Chippies on the back. Oh my God, that damage! You see 2 members drop from Bethany, maybe a third here in just a moment. Spirax gonna get resurrected from his GA as Bradley is trying to carry the team here. Nobody's able to get some damage onto the Victor, and Hunter is gonna pick up a double kill for himself.
Oh my God. Okay, Bradley, I know you're looking for Team Buddy, but that was sick.
Hey,
and actually, they cancel the ultimate. Oh my God, they cancel the Abyssal Voyage. It's not available for them. So many super minions available for Maryville. They take all of their structures, and now there's a huge ask for Maryville. The question is, do they go for it? They're gonna end.
Going for it. Evan RL's going for the end. Hunter is still in the Dragon Pit, and Shady takes the last lick of the Nexus, and that'll be Maryville going up 1-0 in this best of 5.
Wow. Okay. And Maryville, I was wondering if they were going to go for the end there, if they were going to try and backdoor while they keep members on the Baron. A fantastic way to end. And we were talking about it. Maryville are fantastic when it comes to their macro play. We get to see it right there. You can take control of your waves, Bethany. They're too much to handle. End up falling there. Really, really close to potential win.
It was so close. Those fights were so back and forth. This is just getting me so hyped for this series. But Maryville make a statement and take that first game of the series, going up 1-0, and you know, a very interesting end to it itself. But we'll be breaking down that game with the State Farm Analyst Desk right after this.
Welcome back to the 2021 College League of Legends Championship. We are one game deep into our first semifinals series, which also means our first best of 5 series of the week before we crown some new champions tomorrow. Once again, we do have Emily Rand and Niles here on the desk to bring us through the action. And I think we got to start at the top. We have a bit of a draft to recap that we missed out on earlier going into that game, Emily. And maybe some picks a little brain frying than others.
Yeah, so I think that we saw the bans come out as we expected. You know, we were calling for the Gwen ban, we were calling for the Nunu ban, and so I'm glad that we ended up seeing those. My main, I guess, like nitpick in terms of picks is that, and I had the same issue with a lot of teams at the midseason invitational. Actually, if you have a really strong playmaking mid laner, and you're trying to pair it up with a strong playmaking jungler like Xinjiao, which I really liked that we saw coming out. Victor is incredibly strong late. He's incredibly strong at controlling choke points. He has insane AoE damage, right? But I would prefer seeing Bradley on, a really insane playmaker, because I feel like a lot of the things that Bethany like to do, they like to get out of lane, right? Victor is a laning champ. He just sits in lane and he farms and then he scales up and then he dominates team fights. And so I think it just goes against what I have really liked to see from Bethany, which is kind of get out of the laning phase as soon as possible and fight in these team fights and have Bradley kind of take over there.
Niles, are you aligned with that, considering some of the picks that you were calling out for the mid laners going into this match?
Yeah, I really don't like it. I really agree with Emily here, where you saw how Bradley was team fighting really well on the Victor, and it did end up working out later, but it really seemed like if Bethany wasn't in such a hole in the early game that they could have fought back even better. So I really hope to see him off the Victor, even though it looked good later. I don't think it's the formula for Bethany winning.
And while Maryville were a clear favorite going into this game, Bethany was trying to make some plays to get themselves in a winning position. As we live back some of those moments that are provided by Stream Recap, Niles, Bethany had some early strategies that they were going for.
Yeah, so I really like this lane swap out of Bethany because they're versus Senatom Kench, which doesn't take towers very quickly, and they have a Shin on their team that can join the fight very easily. So they end up going for this lane swap where they put the Kai'Sa top lane versus the Vladimir. Shin's already losing lane, so I like this. One thing, though, is that when the Herald fight ends up ensuing, Maryville smartly matches out of base blind. The Senna starts roaming top lane for Herald. But one thing that's really important about this fight is that they use their Shin ulti, and you see Wizard just getting cut out at the beginning of the replay, but they use their Shin ulti, which is a huge cooldown. First Shin ulti, first TF ulti, really important to get something from it, but they lose the Rift Herald regardless of the swap. So losing this fight is really important for Bethany, and it's a really big bummer on their early game that they end up blowing their Shin ultis, right? They commit the lane swap, and they still end up losing the Herald. And you'll see in a moment that the bot lane wave state actually is really bad as well, because Shady stayed down there with his TP and TP into the fight. So he was able to push the wave into the bot lane tower, and after the wave crashes onto the tower, it'll end up bouncing back into Maryville, right? So Shady was able to get the wave, crashes on the tower, and the wave pushes back into Maryville, and then you see Chippies go down there and collect all that farm. So it was just a huge gold swing around the Herald for Maryville.
Yeah, this is the worst case scenario for Bethany, in my opinion, because they gave up so much, right? Like they do the initial swap, which is really good. You get your dual lane out of that lane in the bot lane. You set up for Herald priority, all of that. The timing is really good. But like Niall said, if you're going to be going for this play, you absolutely have to get this Herald, or you have to get priority around this top lane. And not only did they not end up getting what they want from this fight, they give up so much for it. And then the bot wave state is in such a bad position for them that it actually ends up costing them a lot more than you would even think from the lost fight.
And at that point in the game, Maryville seemed to have such a strong hold of it all and continued to make great decisions, Niles, but possibly opening up some opportunities for Bethany as well.
Yeah, so at the 21:30 minute mark, you actually see that Maryville is doing something that's really smart, where Spyrex doesn't have his TP, so he goes to Shadow Chippies in the bot lane because they're playing versus the Shin comp. They'll always be at TP advantage. They play 3 lanes here because Spyrex doesn't have TP. But one thing they don't account for is they need to go through mid and get vision of the bot side jungle before making these plays. You see Hunter really smart, right? He plays off his pink ward to the bot side jungle, and they're able to start this fight onto Maryville, and this is what leads them into getting the third dragon of the game, which gets them the soul win condition, right? And so just Maryville had the right idea here, but they're skipping steps. They need to get vision bot side before they end up making this play. And Maryville sees that Bethany is staying too late on the map, and they randomly pull Baron for. It seemed like they're panicking. They had the right idea, right? Bethany was just bot side, so they wanted to go into the top side where Bethany has no vision. Maybe they can set up for a pick, but pulling Baron is just totally unnecessary. The game is fine, but it seems like Maryville is just panicking in this situation, and they give up Baron for no reason.
Yeah, it's weird because they have the scaling comp here, right? In my opinion, like even with the Victor on the enemy side, I think the fact that they have the combination of the Vladimir and then the Senna TK that kind of, as we know, Senna kind of scales infinitely in a way. They have the late game here already, right? So they don't necessarily have to force this play. And a lot of the mistakes that we saw Maryville making in this game despite the win were around disrespecting vision or were around like overextending or pushing for something where they could have just reined it in a little bit, set up a little bit better, and still had like almost complete map priority and a better setup for some of these team fights.
For sure.
And speaking of team fights and some of the moments that ended up closing out the game, Emily, if we do look towards what seemed to be the kind of decider of, okay, Maryville is taking this, it also showed some opportunities, though, for some chinks in their armor. Maybe they're not as impenetrable as people have thought.
Yeah, so they should not get this Baron at all. Obviously, it's a great steal. It sets up what will happen in the late game, which is that Maryville's lanes are just pushing in, right? And you saw that insane line of super minions just hammering away on the Nexus turrets, but they actually don't even have TP advantage here. There's no way that this Baron should go over to Maryville, so good on them for the steal, but it's kind of like we said, where Bethany have a lot of openings in this game, right, to get back into it, despite giving up the early advantages that we already pointed out. And so for Maryville going into game 2, I definitely want to see them shoring up, paying attention to TP advantage, paying attention to where your vision line is and how much you're extending in these lanes. And then for Bethany, I'm coming away with this where I'm like, maybe a few tweaks in the draft and we're good. Like we can out team fight them.
Yeah, and then for me, I just want to see Maryville going to game 2, totally stay away from Baron, or at least get those setups fixed, okay? Because Baron has been doomed for them. Both teams just randomly started Baron, so both teams need to fix it up. But yeah, obviously, Auto has a really clutch steal, but they need to do a better job around Baron for sure.
Well, this is a best of 5. We do know that Bethany have selected red side going into this next match. So maybe something else that they're trying to bring out from their sleeve.
Yeah, I mean, selecting red side tells me that they have kind of a specific counter pick that they want to go for. So now I'm curious to see what it is. We don't typically see a lot of losing teams selecting red side. Blue side has been heavily favored at tournaments. So I want to see the pick. What are they prepping for here?
Yeah. Niles, thoughts on the side of Bethany to try and walk away with a W to tie up the series?
Yeah, like I said before, red side, 5th pick. I want to see Akali and Irelia, Silas. I expect Gwen to be banned. So just one of those champions, put it in Bradley's hand, and I want to see what he can do.
All right, pretty fiery in our game number 1, but Maryville do walk away with the victory. We'll see if Bethany can tie it up 1-1 in game number 2 that we'll be hopping into right after the break for more CLOL semifinal action. Don't miss it, my friends. It's been a blast.
Hey, I didn't order any pizza.
Jake from State Farm. After you saved me so much dough on insurance with that Parker promo, I devised a promo for you.
Here's the deal, Parker. State Farm offers everyone surprisingly great rates.
Yeah, right. Pepperoni pockets, an atomic brownie, cuckoo crusty.
There's no promo, it's just great rates.
And a cider ranch. You're the man.
When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.